back to another episode here on the Hart Hustle podcast. Our next leader goes from building $1 million homes to holding hands with people detoxing in jail cells. That'll definitely rewire the definition of success real quick. Mr. Chris, I appreciate you, man. You went from Army to real estate to then Honduras. That's not a straight line, truly just a call in. And I love these type of conversations. What did that first mission trip though do to you, man, that nothing else has ever had? Because you talked about a 3 week, what was it? You said it was a 3 week interview, and by the end of it, it was an easy yes. So kind of walk us through that journey, man.
Yeah, it was about a week, but I had gone on several other mission trips, so it's probably my third or fourth time spending a week's long mission in Honduras, and it was absolutely life changing in many ways. I could say that from a personal level, really connecting with my faith, really connecting and recognizing there's just so much more need out in this great big world that we're living in. Sometimes we get caught up in our own little bubbles and our own little day. And so, it certainly changed my perspective from that avenue. But from a professional perspective, and as you mentioned, I was in this real estate development, home building, commercial construction business for a while, and had the opportunity to go on a mission with a medical company. And initially going in, I was like, what am I going to do? Don't really have this expertise, but they wanted someone that had been to Honduras before, a liaison. And so I joined and met pretty much everybody that I was going on this week-long mission at the airport. And it was the CEO of a company. There were some other executives going, and then there was a lot of nurses and doctors. And the intent was to go to remote areas in Honduras and try to provide some form of services. People in those remote villages haven't seen a doctor in a very long time, if at all. And went down. It was not only life changing to recognize the resources that we have here in the United States from healthcare, but it was also life changing in that at the end of the week, the CEO said, I want you to come work with me. And I wasn't in the medical field. I was building houses, as you mentioned, and in real estate development, developing properties, high-end properties. And I jumped at the chance. The gentleman that I speak of, he was just this dynamic, charismatic person. And I, just felt this call, and like, this is something I got to do. And that was my path into healthcare. And as you mentioned, it was a week-long interview. I felt like I kind of make that joke, but I think it really changed the course of my life, professionally and personally.
You mentioned mission trips. What gets you into doing so many mission trips? You just grew up kind of doing mission trips. Like, not a lot of people say I've been on a couple of mission trips, maybe one. But what's getting you on these mission trips? Clearly, you were kind of in that given space.
It's going to church. I was born Catholic, going to Catholic church regularly, and at the time, maybe not so regularly, and probably felt a bit disconnected from my faith. And I remember walking into church and thinking, I think it might have been driving to church or earlier that day. I said, I should go on a mission trip. Just felt this, and then literally at the end of Mass, they made an announcement about an upcoming mission trip. And it was the first being hosted by our church. And so right there and then it's like, okay, I guess I'm in, and signed up for it. And we had these meetings, and we're going, months leading up to it, meeting a week, and everybody that was going knew each other. And there was a lot of parents and teenagers. And I was, I think, in my 30s at the time, and I didn't have any kids able to go because they weren't old enough, and I didn't know anybody. And I remember just going to those meetings, sitting in the back, and then on the way to the airport, every part of my body wanted to turn around and not go. And I wound up going. I got on the plane, layover in Miami. I worked on the phone the whole time, didn't connect with anybody, and they were all talking and connecting. And got down to Honduras, where at the time there was no cell phone service, and really it opened my eyes to a lot of opportunities and connecting with people. And ironically, we were down there to do some construction work, and I looked around and realized a lot of these people, my fellow team members, didn't have any construction knowledge, and so it gave me an opportunity to sit in a bit of a call it a resident expert for, as much as I could be in Honduras, and just became a source for everybody, and just really connected. It was just
Chris, I
amazing.
feel like it's what I always say. A lot of times, doing things that makes you uncomfortable
Mm.
almost leads to purpose,
Yeah.
right? And you mentioned feeling like I wanted to not do it. And I mean, I'll tell you, just this past month, there's this one client that I just wanted to walk away from. And it's been so heavy on my heart. And I've been telling my wife, like, I think I should leave this client. It allows me to do more work, in other ways and XYZ. But, there's still that I don't want to leave my family hanging though because I walked away from income. But a lot of times on the other side of that, and why it was so heavy, you kind of talked about faith, is you have to have faith, right? When those moments come to you, it's like you almost gotta go through it. There's so many times in my life, Chris, that I'm like, I almost knew there was something greater on the other side, but I just wasn't ready for it because I was okay doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And for you, I can only imagine, Chris, you were okay doing what you were wanting to do, not realizing that you weren't chasing money no more. You were truly just chasing service, and that really hits different. How do you explain that to someone?
I don't know how to explain it. Just as you were speaking, I think about something that we talk a lot about here at CleanSlate, which I know we'll have a chance to speak to. But it's this mantra of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's the
Hmm.
society we live in. And so, I think that's one of the lessons I've learned over life, is you've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You have to make some hard decisions, and you have to have faith, and you have to, if you're chasing money, more than likely in life you're gonna make some bad choices. And the reality is not to say that you make the right choices and money is going to follow, because that's not always the case. Um,
Hmm.
but I have an opportunity to tell my kids a lot. If you do something for money, and you leave happiness behind, that's not fulfilling. And so
Hmm.
I think that's a piece of it, is being comfortable with being comfortable being uncomfortable, and then also try to focus on what's right, and what provides you some form of a feeling of being rewarded other than cash.
Yeah. Now I can imagine the work that you fill your cup. I was just talking to somebody else. It's like as we kind of went through life, we always, for some apparent reason, felt that success meant being rich, a lot of money, living in a big home. As you mentioned, people don't have all the money, but they have purpose. They have peace. They didn't need the money, and they feel rich. They
Yeah.
feel rich within, sometimes spiritual, because they've aligned themselves with God a little bit more. So they feel rich in that sense. So I'm just loving that it happened to you at an early age. You said the 30s, right? Like that's almost, in my 20s, I thought I was really grown. And then when I became 30, I actually had my first child, I realized, who was I kidding? Like
Yeah.
I was far from it. Even now at age 35, feeling like there's so much to learn. And life has taught you so much, Chris. And now you're at Clean Slate. Can we talk about what Clean Slate does for those that may not even know that it exists?
Absolutely, yeah. We take care of people that are diagnosed with substance use disorder, predominantly some form of opiates. We also take care of those that are fighting alcohol use disorder, um, and it's on an outpatient basis. We've got 20,000 people that are depending upon us as an organization
Wow.
that we care for on a regular basis, and we provide everything from medical services to behavioral health counseling. We also treat our patient population for Hep C. We test and treat in some locations HIV. We provide PrEP, which is prophylactic to avoid contracting HIV. Our patients are at risk. We treat for STDs. So, we really are trying to take care of a population that's in great need. Very rewarding. Some of my best days are going to the centers and visiting with patients, and talk about having been served by CleanSlate for many years, and the team members at CleanSlate, the providers, the doctors, the nurse practitioners, the front desk team, and they just talk about how this becomes a path and a journey to healing, a path and a journey to reconnecting with family. The amount of stories I hear about people that talk about the fact that they were disconnected from their grandchildren, didn't even know their grandchildren's names. And now, because of the services that we provide, and there's others in the communities that provide similar services, they're able to reconnect. That's huge, because that's what it's about. It's not about cash. It's about those that you love. It's about family. It's about taking care of those that you can. And you mentioned cash. I will say, uh, when you were in your 20s, I was the same. Like, give me more money, I'll be happier. More money equals happiness.
Hmm.
And just to go back to the story of Honduras, I could tell you one of the first things you identify is, and again, this is going back a bunch of years, they didn't have cell phones. There wasn't the internet, no computers, or there was the internet, but they didn't have it in Honduras. Their homes were made of what they had, sticks and bricks and tarps. And they were some of the happiest people I encountered. There was no noise in their lives. They didn't have the noise of a cell phone or a text or a ding for a Facebook post or anything like that. There was no noise. And that was absolutely one of my biggest learning lessons is, there's something to this reducing the noise in our everyday life and finding some form of peace because there's happiness beyond just the cash. So I just wanted to revisit that a little bit because that's absolutely a takeaway that I was able to bring home from Honduras and have to remind myself that a lot because you
Yeah.
get caught up in the race.
If the Hart Hustle podcast has ever sparked any idea or made you think differently, do us a favor. Make sure you guys share this, post it on LinkedIn, or even text that nonprofit friend that you just have. Whatever works, this is what keeps the conversation going and allows us to just grow this community together. Seriously, we appreciate you. No, we do. I think that I love when leaders tell me the story of going to another country was what sparked the interest to do more, because it wasn't until, I feel as Americans sometimes we're very ungrateful, right? And going to other countries and see how they live and how they just are just so happy. When I was in South Africa, I didn't know people live like this, but for sometimes 2 times a day for 4 hours at a time, they'll lose electricity.
Yeah.
That means in the middle of dinner. That means in the middle of your phone charging your phone, and they still go through life like nothing and still some of the most happiest people. I bring this story up all the time because water, something that we just drink every single day. We can go buy bottled water for less than $1. I'm bringing a new bottle of water every day, and they're asking me like, why do you have a brand new bottle of water every day? And me thinking like, what do you mean? It's so normal. And I said, don't you have a bottle of water? And his response was, I do, but I have to fill it up tap water every day. And then we put it in the fridge to make it feel like it's cold water that we drink. And it's like, holy crap. I'm thinking some of these people may not go to eat, but if
Yep.
electricity's gone for 4 hours, mom and dad can't cook. So just thinking about life, I'm teaching sometimes in the dark
Hmm.
because I was teaching the evening classes. Sometimes in the dark, having to go to the bathroom with a flashlight on and still come back, and these people are just happy as a day,
Yeah.
respectful. The way that they just made me feel like I was one of them, and I think I love that me and you got the experience, but I would love for others to experience that because I think that we have a lot of people chasing the right things and not just chasing the paycheck. Every time I think about chasing paycheck, I think about Robin Williams, a
Mhm.
guy that just made people laugh and smile and had it all, but he wasn't happy. End up taking his life because it wasn't about the money. So yeah, and what the line of work that you're doing is really helping others kind of know their worth and see the other side of the tunnel. I've experienced my mom to this day is still on drugs. That's how I lost my mom. I was adopted at 2 years old, and always just I hear stories as well. Those people that overcome it, and I always have faith that one day the right person, the right resources, the right organization can touch her and heal her. And you talk about some of the work that you guys are doing, man, and that's what really making changes. I can imagine that fills your cup every night. Every time that you hear the story, as you mentioned earlier, it's like, this is what I do it. Is that correct?
Yeah. Absolutely. Trying to navigate the environment today has been challenging. I'm not going to lie. There's those moments where you go back and say, "Goodness gracious, I feel like we're fighting all these headwinds."
Hmm.
Whether it be the structure of Medicaid and Medicare, whether it be the political aspect and the politicalization of how we take care of people, whether it be funding sources. I could speak on behalf of the executive team and myself. We're looking at those headwinds, and all we want to do is take care of people. And then you have the challenges in the communities that our team members face, and whether it be financial and inflation, whether it be their own personal challenges that they're facing at the home. You want to try to help them as much as possible. At the end of the day, our goal is to try to put as much of that behind us and look at everything that we're doing for people. And you're exactly right. When you do that, you're able to fill your cup. You can do it all day long, and I'll fight everybody if I need you.
There you go.
Because the 20,000 people and the people in the communities that are the families, everybody listening to this podcast probably knows somebody, as you mentioned, that has some form of addiction. And let's all get together and let's work together on this. It's too important. And sometimes you see the politicalization of it. It's just like, gosh darn it. Can we just put that all aside and let's work together? That's what's important.
And realizing that we can all be at that space at any time,
Yeah.
right? Addiction doesn't just happen. It can happen overnight. Life could happen, and all of a sudden you've taken the wrong thing and got into the wrong thing, and all of a sudden that was a lifetime of you trying to fight to get back. So I hear you on that, man. But also, I'm a big believer. I just want to kind of talk to your leadership a little bit. What role do you play now with ClearSlate?
Yeah, I'm the CEO of CleanSlate. Yeah, I've been here for 3 years.
So I ask that is because you also come from real estate. I'm a big believer that life happens and we learn from every single stage of our lives. What do you take from that real estate world? I mean, the fancy, buildings that are going up that you're a part of, and now you go into from fancy to now broken, but you want them to be this fancy thing, right? What are you taking from the real estate world that has allowed you to be in this role today from the leadership perspective?
Yeah, I think the progression to the role I'm in today and really thinking about the real estate aspect. I think there's certain pieces of the puzzle from my experience that certainly I learned in the real estate world that I've been able to transfer over. And some of that's on the financial front, the knowledge of working with banks, and maybe not so much the leadership. That's the structure and the knowledge and things that while real estate to healthcare is not always transferable, there's a lot of those pieces that I was able to bring over. But I think from the leadership front is really working with people. And when we think about the real estate world, and specifically in construction, and we were building high-end homes, one moment you might be working with someone that does have, a great deal of net worth, and they're very important in the community from, a role, a responsibility, elected official, or, they're an attorney or anything along those lines, and communicating with them, and then you're turning the corner and you're trying, you're working with the contractors or the team members, and in some instances they may not even speak like English, and so you're trying to how do I navigate this, and how do we talk, and how do we make sure we communicate? So I think just understanding people and understanding how to best try to communicate, and try to get I think just have alignment, and I think some of those pieces, just understanding people, was really the biggest takeaway from the real estate world into healthcare.
Okay, all right. And then in the space of this organization, I can only imagine that you've experienced some changes. One of the biggest changes that probably happening right now is everyone trying to figure out how can they implement AI within their organization.
Yeah.
Some thinking that it's replacing care, is replacing the human factor of things. I'm a big believer that no, man, it's removing the crap that gets in the way, to be quite frank, right? It's automating the things that we hate. So many people went to school for something, but then end up doing all this admin, repetitive tasks, and they're like, this is not what I went to school for. Do you see anything, are you guys implementing anything that really finally allows you and allows the staff to breathe? Or thinking about anything that could possibly do that?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm in agreement with you. I think there's a great opportunity here to utilize some form of technology and improve what we do and reconnect people, which is as crazy as that sounds. I can tell you that from the initial phone call, there's sometimes our patients, they struggle with making that initial phone call and saying, I need an appointment because I have a problem,
Hmm.
or I want help. That's a very hard phone call for people to make. And so we've got a highly trained call center that, we really want to make sure we focus on that compassion. We're able to use AI tools to help us navigate some of those conversations. It's real-time learning. It provides us, some, whether it be scripting or
Hmm.
recommended ways we can navigate to help that patient get into care. And I think from a training perspective, that's been fantastic. That human connectivity is so important, especially that initial phone call. And then when you take it over to the actual encounter with a doctor or nurse practitioner or physician's assistant, I think we've all been in the provider where they just stare and they're clicking. Yeah, yeah. Tell me how you're feeling. What's going on today, right? And can you imagine if you and I are having to have a conversation while we're doing this? There's no connection. And
Hmm.
we're really, really big believers in this patient population, the patients diagnosed with substance use disorder. That human connection is so important because so many times they've lost it. They've lost connectivity with their families and friends. And so, while there's avenues for telemedicine, where there's opportunities to get online and get a script or anything along those lines, we believe that human connection is really, really important. So now we think about healthcare today, back to this hunting and pecking and talking. AI tools are allowing our providers to have conversations with our patients, engagement with our patients, and then there's that transcribing side, which will then take care of the documentation. And the payer world and working with the managed care organizations and the Medicaid world, there's a lot of documentation needed.
Yeah.
There's a lot of boxes you need to check and codes you need to put in, and we're constantly being reviewed and asked for clarification. The AI tools will help in two ways. One, reestablish that human connection, that face-to-face conversation. And then two, accomplish what the payers want by capturing the information from the conversation, checking the appropriate boxes, still reviewed by the provider, but it makes the entire encounter much more efficient, and that connection is so important, especially when we're talking about substance use disorder. So, yeah, I think we're embracing AI. We're looking at a variety of ways it can work and help support our teams and make things more efficient.
I love that, and you are right. I think that it allows us to just have a better interaction, human to human. But I always look back at the experience, right? So many people, if you have a bad experience, you just don't go back, and you don't say anything about it. You just don't go back. But people pay for experience. So if you're telling me, as you mentioned, I can go to the doctor, and now I'm having full eye contact, and you're listening to me, the experience just went up that much, all
100%.
because we've implemented AI. And there's still a fear though, right? So how are you leading a team to think AI and go through AI when there's people thinking like it's going to replace my job, but you're doing it, you're helping people to use AI without losing the mission. How are you doing stuff like that?
Yeah, I think some of that is, when making things, you mentioned it, right? It's about experience. And the unfortunate reality of substance use disorder, and for those that are listening that have a family member or a loved one or a friend that's encountered it, recognize that one of the challenges for people that start treatment is staying in treatment. There's a high percentage of people that discontinue treatment after the first or second or third visit.
Hmm.
We've got to keep patients engaged, especially when it comes to substance use disorder. Well, how can we do that? There's little things that we can document and put in the medical record, and and it can create that connectivity where I may remember, or I'll use the medical record and AI to help me, you know, ask a question about maybe your life experience or your wife or your child. Create that connectivity. Oh my gosh. Now it is using AI to help navigate that conversation, but now you've been able to express eye to eye, face to face, without staring at a piece of equipment. Hey, I just want to follow up on our last conversation. Now you mentioned you had a big event with your child. How'd that go? Experience just went
Yep.
up. Now we have a patient that might be more engaged and more likely to stay in care. That's what we
Yeah.
want. That's so
Yeah.
important, especially in this space.
Because they feel seen, they
Yeah,
feel like you care,
yeah,
right? It's those simple little things, man. I
little
just feel it
things.
truly make a difference. And a good leader like yourself, seeing it ahead of the time, is about how you experience people. And when you talk about real estate, that is so huge. Is how you make that person feel when they're about to make the biggest investment of their lives.
Yeah.
Like that's huge. So you talked about some of the knowledge you take away. Of course, it's the same thing here. People are making these investments, probably the biggest investment they'll ever make in their life,
Yeah, and
right?
themselves.
Because yeah, and
Right.
themselves.
In this space, this is investing in themselves. In the real estate world, you're exactly right. There's the salesmanship piece of it. There's the
Hmm.
recognition that someone is making a big financial investment, and there's that emotional connection to that financial investment. And what we need to make sure is, we sell someone today on the investment in themselves. That's huge, right?
Hmm.
How can I help you invest in yourself? And that's what it means to stay in care. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think when I hear a lot of people that's in the kind of the healthcare space, they always say we have to rebuild. But what would it take to rebuild trust in the healthcare system that's left so many behind? I hear that all the time, and yeah, rebuild, rebuild. But what are we rebuilding? What is it going to take?
I think that I can go real high level or down to the minute there. And high level is we've got to rethink this whole payer structure and how the states are funded and Medicaid. And, we got to not politicize it and we have to think about these needs. And I think that's a part of it. And then I think the rebuilding of the trust is really that connection. And I have a wonderful, provider that I've gone to for many years. And, I'm starting to see the strain in how those encounters are taking place, and you can see it's the same thing we talked about. We've got to reconnect the physicians and help them do what they signed up for. When you talk to doctors and nurse practitioners, registered nurses, et cetera, they got into this for a reason. They want to help people. They didn't get into this so they can document and check the boxes and send that to the payer and then not get paid and have to go back and reestablish or redocument. That's not why they did this. And so we've got to reestablish that. We've got to bring that back to the table. And that's the challenging piece. It's the balance. And in the leadership roles, that's where we have to. I want to take away the financial aspect for those that are providing care, but the environment we're in today, it doesn't allow you to do that so much. And that's the piece that if we can do that, I think that'd be a huge leap, or take some steps in that direction.
I want to kind of go backwards a little bit, just a little bit here. We talked about seen and heard. What does a seen and heard experience actually look like for someone that's in recovery?
Seen and heard. I'm sorry.
What does that experience look like for someone that's actually in recovery, seen and heard?
Yeah. Oh gosh. When I have an opportunity to talk to patients, and I wish I could do it a whole lot more, but the stories that I hear, especially those that are well on their journey in recovery, is they haven't been seen, and they haven't been heard, and they have been disconnected from loved ones. Loved ones who've tried and tried, and I've seen both sides of this. Um, at some point, people hit rock bottom, and at that point, they have been unfortunately, they feel like they are invisible, and they don't feel as though there's anybody to support them. And some of the community programs out there's just not enough resources. And so, a lot of people unfortunately get lost in the system. And, it's pretty amazing when you just sit down and you talk to a patient and you have a conversation. Um, our team members experience it every day. It's just such a rejuvenating experience for both parties, because here I am just spending some time with somebody, and there they are receiving and being heard. And it's monumental. And I'm telling you, they come back for treatment when they feel as part of it, this connection with, whether it be someone at the front desk, whether it's one of our counselors or one of our providers. It's huge.
And on what you're saying there, right? People just feeling heard and seen and happy, they come back. I also think that people get too caught up on the first time they try, it doesn't work out for them.
Oh, yeah.
And I like to always give the response to that of it's like a relationship. The first person, Chris, that I can only imagine that you dated, probably not the person that you married.
Right.
I mean, if it is, kudos, but
No,
not everyone has that opportunity, right?
right, right.
We have to continue to date to really find that one. And I think so many people give up too early,
Yeah,
and I just wanted to kind of piece that because I've experienced of going through therapy, and the first person actually was telehealth, and I realized that telehealth wasn't my thing.
yeah,
I love that in-person energy, and when I went in person and I found that first person, I tell you, Chris, I've only went to therapy one time, and you would think that I went, and this was years ago, and you would think that I go all the time, but the experience that she gave me allowed me to realize, like, oh my God, she was so good, and if I ever have to go back, it's to that person
yeah.
because
Yeah,
that's the
that
experience she
connection and
provided,
that,
so it yeah, yeah, it's feeling seen and feeling heard, right? When you find
yeah,
that person, it's going to
yeah,
make them want to come back time and time again because and when we can eliminate some of that documentation, I'll be very honest, I don't know if she was documenting at all because I just felt like it was just me and her having a conversation, like we were friends for a very long time, and she was just asking me questions that I had the answers to. I just never thought that way,
yeah,
and that's what I love so much because people think therapy or any of this help is someone is telling you what to do. And it's not that.
yeah.
It is someone just having a conversation, allowing you to see life a little bit differently than what you're probably used to, right? Can you agree? Was that some of the how these conversations go?
Absolutely. Yeah. I can tell you, as you're speaking, I was thinking about, my first experiences in healthcare. And when I transitioned from real estate, I actually worked at a correctional healthcare organization. And that's the group that went on a mission trip.
Okay.
And what I quickly saw was there's so many people incarcerated in this country
Hmm.
that have not felt seen and heard. They've gone down the wrong path. They've made some bad decisions, or life has happened. And I can tell you, I have an incredible just respect for the nurses and the docs and those that are working in correctional health care. It's a bit of an area that a lot of people know about.
Hmm.
But once someone's incarcerated, they're provided health care. And some of the most compassionate, mission-oriented people I've ever experienced work in corrections. And that was some of what I saw for the first time. When a nurse goes to a correction, and they go into an area and they go to a cell and they start talking to a patient with compassion, the whole demeanor changes for someone that's incarcerated. Someone's talking to me. They're not yelling at me. They're not telling me where I need to go. They're actually speaking to me as a human being. We viewed them as
Hmm.
patients. That's huge. And so I quickly learned how important and impactful relationships are, especially in healthcare. And when you see someone that has been incarcerated that unfortunately has not had the ability or the access to care and they start receiving it, it's a game changer. Now, the
Yep.
unfortunate reality is there's a lot of recidivism in this country. I think it goes back to where the resources are when someone has the opportunity to leave incarceration and they get back into the community, and there's just not that bridge to help them get back on their feet. That's where we struggle as a country, and that's some opportunities I'd love to see us bridge. And that's ultimately what landed me here as an
Yeah.
opportunity to hopefully help people break that cycle. If we can get people treatment while they're not behind bars, and hopefully it not only stops the cycle, but reconnects them with all the things that they loved, at some point. And so that's what's so
Mhm.
motivating and exciting. And to your point, that connection is meaningful, really.
What can the average person do today to end the cycle of addiction in their own communities?
Yeah, I think
We
there's
talked
always the,
about being heard and seen. Is it just meeting people at what they're at, being more okay to have these conversations? A lot of times when we see homelessness, we just automatically put that stigma that they're bad people.
yeah,
Don't talk to them. Is it those conversations that we should be having on a regular? Just saying hello to people more? Where do we
100%.
start?
Try to show some form of compassion and love for those that you're encountering, whether you know them or not. How often do we go on the other side of the street when we see someone, that may look like they're in need? And the reality is we turn a blind eye. Now we have to remain safe and we have to remain vigilant and be thoughtful. But at the same time, there's so many times when we encounter people that are asking for help or may not verbally be asking for help, but are in need of help. And we simply aren't there. A hello or any kind of you know recognition of that person can go a long way, like we were talking about. Eye contact, say hello, how are you? It's meaningful.
That's it. The
Little things like
basics.
that, all the way up to volunteering, all the way to really get involved on the political side and see what we can do to help people that are in need. Right now,
Yeah.
there's certain gaps in what we're doing as a country. I think we've done a wonderful job addressing overdoses, and there are incredible results that are shown where we've reduced deaths from overdoses. We have to link people into care at that point, and I think that's the next step, and I think it's really important.
I would love to people to also understand that substance use disorder isn't statistics. It's truly someone that we love.
Yeah,
We all experience it somewhere in our families. It could be our siblings, it could be our parents, grandparents, and it's up to us to really break that cycle. And it happens with, like you mentioned, just allowing someone to feel seen and heard. It's not judging someone by who they are today, but how can we help them become a better version tomorrow?
exactly
And
right.
sometimes it's exactly that. It's just listening and hearing them out. I want to talk to, as we start to wrap up, let's talk to those leaders, man, who've lost their spark, who now just realizing, I don't know what to do. What does purpose look like on the other side of burnout?
Yeah, burnout. That's been a hot topic as of late within the healthcare world, and I think that is certainly we get lost in that noise, and healthcare providers specifically, they've had a tough time over the last bunch of years. We know what's happened with COVID, and we know what's happened post-COVID, and we recognize the challenges that we face when it comes to how do you get paid and the financial burden, and we all get caught up in that noise. And as an executive team, we're constantly talking about getting out to the centers, reconnect with our team members, make sure we have that connectivity ourselves, because it's real easy as a leader to get caught up in, I got to look at the financial statement and the balance sheet, and I got to talk to the banks, and I've got to talk to the board, and I've got to talk to these, the payers, and you lose sight of what you're really trying to do. And I think as a leadership team, it's just so important to continue to come back to your mission, come back to what you're trying to accomplish, and really focus in on what's meaningful. And so that's so important, because otherwise you're going to get burned out. You'll be going through the motions. You'll be sitting there thinking about the documentation. I got to check this box. I got, and rinse, repeat. You got to reconnect with the purpose.
You're right, man. I leave you with this blind question. First of all, I want to say thank you for your services, because I didn't say that in the beginning. But you've led soldiers, you saved lives, and you built companies. But what's a moment of failure or fear you've never told your team about because you still haven't fully forgiven yourself? Got to put you on the hot seat there, Chris. Sorry that I came with this question, but
Woo!
I had to end with a good one.
Yeah, yeah. How many listeners do you have? Oh boy. Um, you know, from a leadership perspective, I would say there's moments where I have made decisions on people's employment
Mhm.
that I was too fast. I made the wrong decision. I made it with emotion, and I've impacted people's livelihoods. And as I talk to different leaders about the idea of, hey, we've got this underperforming team member, and we need to make a change. I want to make sure that we give that the utmost thought, and sometimes you do have to make those hard decisions of discontinuing someone's employment, allow them to be successful elsewhere. It's not always the right, like you mentioned, you date someone, maybe that's not the right relationship on the front end, maybe this isn't the right fit for somebody. But I've definitely made decisions in my career where I look back and I think about it, and I think,
Yeah.
I could have handled that differently, and I have negatively impacted someone's livelihood, their financial situation, their family situation at times, and yeah, that's
Yeah,
tough.
I mean, thank you for sharing that. And I hear you. I've been in leadership where I've had to make those calls. It's always hard to make those calls, right? Because we have empathy, we care for people. But I've also been on the side where I've been in companies where I felt undervalued, and I've either had to walk away or life just happened, right? Like whatever that may look like. And it is so easy for us to dwell on the negative at that time.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, sometimes it what sparks people to do their own thing,
Correct.
to see their own value, their own worth. And I would always have to, when letting people go, speak it at that level. There's going to be other great opportunities out there for you. I'm hoping that you take everything you learned here to implement into your next journey. But, when I walked away from the airline industry, I was there for 5 years. I loved it. I was facilitating, as I mentioned, traveling the world, somebody else's dime. How great is that?
Yeah.
However, it wasn't filling my cup. I mean, the work that I was doing was filling my cup, but the company wasn't. I was still feeling undervalued, and it came to the point where that we had pandemic changed so much, so they were giving out these opt-out packages, and this is probably 2 years after the pandemic. But I decided, you know what? I gave myself 2 years when I took this position of facilitator. I got to go. I felt undervalued. And I remember one of my leaders saying, Efrain, if anything, you're one of the ones I'm not so worried about. I know you're going to do great things. So it allowed me to leave with my head up high. Even though I didn't feel valued, a leader realized my value. Because a lot of times it's not just it's not just a one individual. It's an organization, and you just got to follow that ladder, that command that's being provided. Not that we want to do it as leaders, it's just what we're being told at times. And him, me leaving with that, I would always remember that he said that to me. I'm never worried about you, Efrain. I know you'll do well on your own. And sometimes we just have to have that conversation and understand that we're just letting someone spread their wings. They're too talented for our organization. They can do greater things if they go and do it on their own. And I would always remember, that's really why I don't get into politics, to be quite frank, because I believe that I could do so much more from the nonprofit level than being at the political level, where there's so much, you see it, man, so much fight, so much against one another. And I remember trying to get into the commissioner race here locally and seeing how nasty they can be to each other. Why would I want to do that? Chris? But anyway, man, I'll leave you with, what's your blind question for the next leader, Chris?
Yeah, I'd say, well, that was a good blind question, by the way.
I knew you would love it.
Oh, man. What's one piece of leadership advice that you've received that turned out to be wrong? Um, and why?
That's good. That actually, no one has, see, I love you, Chris. I love you for that, because no one talks about that. What is the wrong leadership advice? No, it is true. And even though it's wrong, we learn from it.
100%.
That's what I love about life. Even when you do something wrong, you learn from it. Just don't make the same mistake twice. Then it's on you. The first time, we could give it a break. The second time, that's on you now, Chris.
That's right. Well, I learned from you today. I love that leader that you had that had that conversation, the words they used. I think that's fantastic. And so
Yeah, man.
that's great.
You know what, Chris? When I was leaving too, I was not a fan of his.
Yeah.
Because he got into a role. I knew him when he was a facilitator, and then he got into a role as supervisor, and I just felt that he lost himself in the change.
Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was just his leadership also trying to micromanage him. And it was. His leader was totally a micromanager, and I'd seen that with my own eyes. So as I was leaving, man, I was not happy with him. I was not happy with him. I was not happy with my other supervisor. I just felt like, you guys taking this role, and as you're great people, you guys didn't care enough about your team. And I would be when I would vocalize, I become the bad employee, right? Even though I've given them everything, I open my mouth once to stand my ground and to support everybody else, I automatically become a problem.
Yeah.
So that same individual, man, when I was leaving, he realized that me and him were on the same page. He actually gave me a book. It's called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield, the guy that used to do Chicken Soup for the Soul. I don't know if you remember those
I
books
do.
when we were a little
Yeah.
younger, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, this is the guy. But it was, and he wrote a nice little thing in the inside as well. And this is somebody that I wasn't seeing eye to eye with.
Wow.
He says, Efrain, this is not a brand new book, but it changed my life. And as you continue to do what you're doing, I just want to change yours. And that's the last conversation. That and what I told you he said. And you know what? Because of that, I end up respecting him because of that.
That's great.
And I would call him and say, hey, and I called him a year later after life happened. I said, hey, man, I want to just thank you for the opportunity. Because at times when we're in it, we don't realize why life is happening the way it is. But then we can sit here and another day, like God is that good,
Yeah.
that one door closes, the another one opens. But if you dwell on the negative, and I've experienced it from brothers and sisters, I'm one of 10, and I still have siblings that are still dwelling on the negative, dwelling on the past, and they haven't seen what's ahead. I couldn't do that. I took the sexual abuse, I took the adoption, Chris, and I said, how do I continue to break cycles? How do I continue to make a difference for people that are going to experience what I've experienced? And hope that they don't have to experience that, right? To be more vocal on these conversations. But anyway, yeah, man, from leadership perspective, kudos to him. Kudos to you, Chris, for making the transition as well. Military, real estate, now you're in this space. And you think about it, you've always been helping people. You're in the people, giving people an opportunity space. I don't know if you realize that, Chris, but your whole life, you've been changing lives, man, from giving someone peace, peace at night, like myself, because you were serving our country, real estate, helping others getting to these homes that they never thought was imaginable. Pretty sure you had to pull strings and do things and bend over backwards for people. But now look what you're doing, man, in the healthcare space, really making impact. So we thank you. And where can people find you? What is your LinkedIn? What is the website if people wanted to find out more about the organization?
Yeah, CleanSlateCenters.com. Probably the best area to learn about our organization. It's really the team that makes a difference. I got the easy job. I do whatever I can to support them, and they're doing the real hard work in the community. So I owe it to them, and great organization, great group of people.
And are you on LinkedIn? People can connect with you on LinkedIn?
I am, yeah, Chris Bove.
All right, man. People got to connect with you because I can only imagine this is just the beginning, man. There's so much ahead of you, Chris, and I don't think that you realize it, man. So
No,
I appreciate you.
No,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
it. Yeah, guys, if you guys enjoying these conversations, don't always. What I'm talking about. Always remember to like, subscribe, and comment, because that's how the conversations continue to show up on people's radars. A lot of times, is that one thing that we need to hear to change our lives. Is that one conversation? Is that one person that you realize, wow, that person just like me, that would then also change the trajectory of your life. Don't be afraid to meet people where they're at. Don't be afraid to get uncomfortable with yourself. Drop the ego, because that's what's holding you back at times. It's the ego, it's the pride. And there's so many people like Chris and those at ClearSlate that is really trying to make a difference. So I appreciate you guys watching. My name's Efrain. This is Chris. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. Latest.